Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. Nutraceutical Business Review is proud to partner with Lonza, Rubicon Bridge and Sensient Technologies to host today's webinar on sports and active nutrition. Today, we'll start with a presentation from Dr. Zain Saiyed, Global Director, Research and Product Development, and Shelby Linville, Global Associate Director, Product Marketing, both from DFS and Ingredients, Lonza Capsules and Health Ingredients. Moving on, we then have a presentation from Lee Gray, Business Development Director, and Daniel Hibbett, Regulatory Transformation Director, who are both from Rubicon Bridge. And finally, taking to the podium will be Ashley Moore, Commercial Director, and Ricardo Arango, Innovation and Technical Services Manager from Sensient Pharmaceutical. Then we'll have some questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question at any time, please use the chat function below. And now, let me hand over to Dr. Saiyed and Shelby Linville, today's first speakers.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Shelby Linville, and I'm representing Lonza Capsules and Health Ingredients. Today, I'm excited to kick off the session with a look at how longevity is evolving, not just as a health goal, but as a mindset that's deeply connected to active lifestyles. As we think about how people are engaging with their health today, the story is no longer about simply aging well. It's about living well for longer. And that shift is reshaping the supplement landscape across life stages. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Zain Saiyed, Global Director of Research and Product Development for our DFS and Ingredients business. Together, we'll explore how consumer expectations around longevity are shaping formulation opportunities and how science-backed solutions can help brands deliver on them. Here's a quick look at where we're headed today. We'll start with a consumer mindset shift around longevity, explore key market and formulation trends, and then look at how brands can meet evolving needs across life stages with smart, targeted innovation. So consumers aren't waiting for health issues to arise. Instead, they're proactively optimizing how they feel and function, physically and mentally. This is where longevity intersects with active nutrition. Whether it's staying mobile, boosting energy, or supporting muscle strength, people want solutions that fuel performance not just today, but also as prevention for tomorrow. In fact, 57% of consumers are exercising more, and 36% are taking supplements specifically to stay well. So longevity isn't about age anymore, it's about agency. And that shift is redefining what it means to stay active, strong, and in control across every life stage. We're seeing a few key trends drive this shift. First, we see that energy and mobility are now central to how consumers define healthy aging. So they want to stay strong and they want to stay independent and active, and that means solutions that go beyond the basics. Second, there's a growing preference for branded, science-backed ingredients. Consumers are looking for proof, transparency, and real benefits, and they're willing to pay more for that confidence also. And finally, we see that simplicity really does matter. People are gravitating towards solutions that are easy to understand and address multiple needs all at once. And as we talk about longevity, it's important to remember it's not just a single moment in time. It's a movement that spans decades of life. Consumers today want solutions that evolve with them from their 20s through their 70s and beyond. And what they're looking for shifts along the way. So in early adulthood, for example, it's often about energy, metabolism, and proactive wellness. By midlife, things shift a little bit, and priorities start to center around joint comfort and recovery. And for adults 50 and older, we see that consumers are looking to stay mobile, maintain their strength, and live independently.
Mm-hmm. And very rightly said, Shelby. I think this is where Lonza CHR, or Capsule and Health Ingredients Division, comes into play with our in-depth understanding of capsules, with our understanding of ingredients, and with our understanding of dosage form solution. We can tailor and develop formulas that are relevant to consumer needs at different life stages. And we also can help customers solve their toughest formulation problems.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zain. So one of the fastest growing areas within active nutrition is actually women's health, a market that's now worth over 2.8 billion US dollars globally. More women are turning to supplements and to support energy, recovery, and overall wellness, especially through life stages like perimenopause and postmenopause, where needs start to shift. But the real takeaway here is that these consumers are looking for holistic, personalized solutions to support their unique needs throughout their life stages.
Mhm. And yes, I think women's health is definitely in limelight. And again, here we work very closely with our existing branded ingredient that can support both the energy as well as the mobility trend that is supporting the mindset of the consumer when they think of healthy aging. At the same time, we also have partnered with a lot of ingredient suppliers. So we know this branded, clinically backed ingredient. And as we develop concepts and formula, we can develop a formula that can address multifunctional needs to support women through different life stages, whether it's prenatal, during pregnancy, postnatal, or just the daily essentials that is needed to improve general wellness. Two ingredients that definitely I would like to highlight for today's purpose is UC2. UC2 is our anti-nature tag to collagen. We have 20 plus research study that supports the benefit of UC2 in supporting joint mobility, flexibility, and comfort. The uniqueness of UC2, it's small dose. It's a 14 milligram once daily small dose that delivers all this good benefit. And two things highlighting UC2 is we have done studies, we have done more than 10 plus human clinicals uh, that supports the benefits of UC2. And these studies have been done in individuals as young as 20 years old. So these are healthy, exercising adult as young as 20 years old to subjects who have joint disorder like osteoarthritis. So on the upper end of age subjects up to 75 years of age. So we are spanning, or we have data that supports UC2's efficacy from as young as 20 years old to as old as 75 years old, and both in healthy exercising adult as well as subjects having joint discomforts or joint disorder like osteoarthritis. The other ingredient that I would like to highlight is Carnipure. Carnipure is Lonza's branded L-carnitine. L-carnitine play a pivotal role in energy metabolism, where it transports fatty acid to mitochondria. So basically, in layman term, it helps convert fat into energy. And we have done more than 10, 20 clinicals, which shows that Carnipure helps support energy. It helps recover from exercise, and also it helps with weight management. The combo of these two ingredients, UC2 collagen plus Carnipure L-carnitine, can directly focus the energy as well as the mobility trend that you are seeing, and that what customers are looking for in making the longevity journey across their health span. So why branded ingredient matter? Shelby, you rightly identified in the beginning of the talk that branded ingredient brings that level of transparency. It brings that credibility, which is very, very critical, because many of the branded ingredients like Lonza's UC2, Carnipure, as well as other ingredient suppliers that are developing branded ingredient, they do science for that ingredient to ensure that these ingredients deliver on that promise. So there is science to support the efficacy as well as safety of that ingredient. And secondly, from the consumer standpoint, as we see this report from FMCG, it is very clear that the consumers do prioritize ingredients backed by clinical studies when in their purchasing decision of what supplement they want to buy. So I think it is very, very important to use branded ingredients that are backed by science. And at Lonza, we go beyond science, trying to also bring in the quality aspect, the safety aspect, the traceability aspect, as well as our in-house regulatory team that supports our customer for ensuring approvals of this product uh, within US or globally in different region. So again, Lonza empowers brand to bring authentic consumer trust through science-driven differentiation. This is these are three kind of formulation. This is food for thought, actually. This slide shows how using UC2 and Conipure or Lonza's resisted arabinogalactan, which is an immune health ingredient, you can develop different concepts or innovate, develop products that are meaningful and can make an impact in the marketplace. The three examples that's shown here, like the holistic energy is a holistic energy and mobility sachet it combines UC2 with resisted and B vitamin. It's a great formula for someone who is looking for a solution on the go to support energy. The other two formulas are active aging, which combines UC2 with Conipure and magnesium. The way I see this is more like a musculoskeletal support formula. And then on the right, a woman's longevity blend, where you can combine Conipure's benefit with a protein powder and combining with ingredients like ashwagandha for stress management or astaxanthin as an antioxidant support. It's more of a holistic formula for daily essential that women can take it on the go. So just to wrap up, as Shelby mentioned in the beginning, longevity, it's beyond just living longer. It's living longer, living better, having taking control of yourself, having more strength and be more mobile. And here Lonza CHI has solutions beyond ingredient, specific type of capsules to pair it up, or also our unique formulation expertise that comes from the DFS side. And that's why Lonza is the innovator's choice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Zain. Thank you for walking us through the formulations and the ingredient credibility and the importance of branded ingredients too. I think in closing, longevity is no longer a niche. It's truly becoming the baseline expectation among consumers. People want to feel good. They want to stay active and maintain their lifestyles for as long as possible. And now they're turning to supplements that can help make that happen, not now, not later. And like Zain mentioned, at Lonza, we're here to help our partners create smart, science-backed products that support consumers on that journey. Of course, with ingredients that deliver and formulations that connect. So thank you all again for joining us today. Please enjoy the rest of the event. Take care. Okay, first question of the Q&A. Could you please discuss Lonza CHI's unique ability to look at both the ingredient and the delivery system when formulating active health products?
It's a great question. At Lonza, especially our CHI division, we have hard empty capsule. We have health ingredients that are backed by science for their safety and efficacy. And then our dosage form solution, where we combine the ingredients with our delivery technology. That's where our in-depth understanding of ingredient science, not only our own ingredients like UC2 undenatured type 2 collagen or Conipure, but across other ingredient supplier, we have a very good understanding of what branded ingredients are out there, and that can work very well with our liquid dosage form. So it's a perfect marriage of function and form, because our delivery technology allows ingredients, it enhances their functionality. Either it allows for a better bioavailability or better functionality, or especially with our capsule polymer, we can also release the ingredient at a specific site in the gut. So also protecting them from stomach acid. So I think we have a lot in our toolbox to help ingredient perform better and deliver the benefit that the consumers are looking for.
Very interesting, very relevant to today's market landscape and consumer demand. So thank you for sharing that with us. On the next question, could you please tell me a little more about the agency, not age, approach to active health and an extended lifespan?
I think that's a great question as well. I think we have heard a lot about longevity. There's a big trend about consumers looking for longevity, but if, as the saying goes, the devil is in the detail, I think if you really try to understand the consumer behavior, we are looking at longevity, but not living longer. Yes, they want to live longer, but they want to stay healthy at each and every phase of their life. So they want to have better strength, better muscle, better energy, so that they can enjoy every phase of their life. And that's where ingredients like UC2, which can allow a better joint health, or Conipure, which can help with energy, or the combination of UC2 with Conipure that can support musculoskeletal structure and help the consumer stay physically active across the entire lifespan or health span, is what the consumers are looking for. And that's where the concept of it's an agency, it's not just longevity, it's living longer and living much, much better for an improved wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really this continuation too of this proactive versus reactive approach of managing your wellness. And so supplements really empower consumers to do that. So I think that's an awesome sentiment and clearly shows that continuation. Next question. So what are some ingredients that would work synergistically with UC2 or Carnipure that you haven't formulated with yet, but would like to?
I think that's an interesting question. So UC2 has been out there for quite some time. There are a lot of combinations available, but some of the combination that I think when I think of health span, longevity aspect, I think combining the benefits of UC2 with, say, protein powder, because when you talk about active lifestyle or active consumers, having a combination of UC2 with protein powder or UC2 Conic Pure plus protein powder could add a lot of powerhouse in terms of providing energy, providing that strength that the consumers are looking for. Uh, when it comes to specifically UC2 on denatured type 2 collagen, there are a combination of UC2 with other joint health building ingredients like glucosamine and also herbal ingredients like Boswellia serrata, which are known to be anti-inflammatory. So combining those are existing. But one of the things that I would like to highlight when combining UC2 with ingredients that helps with better inflammation, managing inflammation, there are special class of molecule like specialized pro-resolving mediators. These are metabolites of omega, like the EPA and DHA. So they are formed in the body by the enzymatic action on EPA and DHA. So combining UC2 with this SPM is something I don't think so has been done and would make a lot of sense to combine with this new class of anti-inflammatory or inflammation resolving molecule. So those are combinations I think would make a lot of sense. And going back to the first question about our delivery technology, we have tool in the toolbox like the DuoCap, which is our capsule-in-capsule technology, where we can combine UC2 in the inner capsule, and in the outer capsule, we can have an omega. That could be a very nice, simple concept where you are bringing in benefit from two different ingredients, UC2 for joint, omega fatty acids for their anti-inflammatory benefits. So that also can be a simple concept which can be visually appealing, but also scientifically more efficacious.
Absolutely. And I think that really taps into consumer demand around combination formulas or multifunctional formulas in one single dosage form. So that's super cool. Thanks for sharing on that. So we have one last question, and it is, what are the best alternatives for joint discomfort or sleep for active consumers?
Yeah, I think there are two classes when we talk of non-pharmaceutical approaches. So one is obviously when you talk about one is a supplement and non-supplement. And in non-supplement, it's more about physical therapy, heat and cold compression to manage the pain or joint discomfort. And when it comes to supplements, that's where ingredients like UC2 with 20 plus years of research behind it comes into play for supporting individuals to reduce joint discomfort, increase mobility. There are three classes of ingredients that I would highlight within the joint discomfort relieving. One is ingredients like UC2, unique mechanism of action, ingredients that act as a precursor for building the joints, like the collagen peptides, for example. Or, as I mentioned briefly in a previous question, ingredients like herbal ingredients, Boswellia serrata, are anti-inflammatory, and a combination of these ingredients could make a nice recipe to help manage the joint discomfort. When it comes to sleep, yes, I think melatonin is a good one, but obviously the consumers are looking for more natural alternative to melatonin in many of the countries. And that's where ingredients like valerian, for example, lemon balm can come into play because of their benefit to kind of reduce stress and allow for a better sleep. So again, a combination. This also leads to an ingredient called Rolora that Lonza makes and sells. And Rolora also is a stress relieving ingredient. It is a combination of two Chinese herbal medicine plants, Magnolia officinalis and Philodendron. We have done studies where it shows that it has a calming effect. So combining Rolora with melatonin or Rolora with lemon balm or valerian could be a great combination for sleep benefit.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like there's no shortage of natural or holistic remedies for different health concerns, which is really cool and really empowering for consumers. So that concludes all of our questions today. Thank you so much, Zain. And we will resume the session.
Thank you, Shelby.
Hi, I'm Lee, and I'm the Business Development Director here at Rubicon Bridge. I'm joined by my colleague Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm the Regulatory Transformation Director here at Bridge.
And today we're going to be talking about a few of the kind of most trending ingredients in the marketplace, but from a slightly different angle, because we're going to be talking about regulatory requirements and specifically things you really need to know in order to go to market. So we're going to start with creatine. And first, I mean, it's bonkers to me that this is a trending ingredient in 2025, and people kind of acting like it's just been invented, seeing as it was actually discovered in 1832 and originally brought to market in 1993. But I think probably what we're seeing at the moment is the shift away from the traditional use case, which is very much like bodybuilding, weightlifting, things like that, into more of an endurance and mainstream health as well. So we're not going to deep dive the science, but just to kind of cover the two modes of action. So firstly, creatine draws water into the muscle, and a more hydrated muscle is a stronger, better performing muscle. And secondly, creatine is stored as creatine phosphate in the muscle. And basically what this means is that it can donate a phosphate group to ADP, converting it to ATP, which is the body's source of energy. So that's kind of an overview of what creatine does. But Dan, what can you actually say it does? Because obviously claims are quite highly regulated in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. The creatine is a really interesting one from a claims perspective, because it's one of the few ingredients that are commonly in sports products that you can actually make sports-related claims on. So there's actually two authorized claims for creatine. They are: creatine increases physical performance in successive bursts of short-term high-intensity exercise. And then there's a second claim for those over the age of 55, which is that daily creatine consumption can enhance the effect of resistance training on muscle strength in adults over the age of 55. So both of those claims require 3 grams of creatine in the product for them to be used. Lee, how does that compare to sort of what you're seeing in the market in creatine products?
So obviously what we tend to see in terms of trends and how they flow globally is where things tend to hit it off in the US and then flow to Europe, right? And what we see in the US is much higher dosages. A standard dose would probably be 5 grams per day, which obviously would enable you to make those health claims. But then just to make things more complicated, I'm aware that we also have some maximum permitted levels across Europe as well.
Yeah, so because creatine is what's classed as an other substance in food supplement legislation here in Europe, it's regulated at a national level. So there's no harmonized European legislation on it. So each country has may decide to set their own upper levels. And for the most part, European upper levels are set at 3 grams per day. So that's conveniently the same as the amount you need to make the claim. But it's difficult for the products you mentioned where you're seeing up to 5 grams of creatine, because those products would probably would be non-compliant in a lot of European markets. There's a little bit of deviation in the EU, with some markets like Spain setting their level slightly below 3 grams. But in practice, you can often get up to 3 grams through the use of mutual recognition. And there is also a bit of a nuance in Italy that you're allowed up to 6 grams per day, but that's only for the first month of use. And I don't know if there's any sort of rationale from your perspective, Lee, that might allow those high doses.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. I think probably where it comes from is when creatine was first marketed, there was a real push and communication around the fact that you need to, when you first start taking it, you need to do like a loading phase. So often the recommendation would be you take a high dosage for a period of weeks, and the theory being that that would actually saturate the muscle cells with creatine faster, so you'd see the benefits faster. I think that's been, I don't want to say debunked, because I'm not 100% sure that it isn't accurate, but I think it is widely considered now that that was in effect a marketing ploy, and that actually the benefits of creatine are realised if you just take it how it's kind of directed on the product packaging. So you mentioned 3 grams of creatine, but that's creatine and not necessarily creatine monohydrate, correct?
Yeah, so creatine monohydrate is one of the forms of creatine. So you need approximately 3.4 grams of creatine monohydrate to correspond with 3 grams of creatine. But that's not the only form that we see in the market. So there are numerous forms. I think there's more than 10 forms that I've seen sort of over the years, with creatine monohydrate being far and away the most common. But the status of the form differs as well. So there are forms such as creatine citrate, which you can use in food supplements, but you couldn't use in a more traditional food. Whereas creatine monohydrate you could use in a nutritional bar if you wanted, or in other applications. But then there are some other forms that are banned here in Europe that might be a bit more common in other markets, like in the US. So something like creatine malate or creatine alpha ketoglutarate, those are classed as novel foods here in Europe, so couldn't be used.
And there's also, so the majority of the products on the market are creatine monohydrate. It feels like Creapure, which is a proprietary ingredient, but it is in effect creatine monohydrate. That has pretty good recognition across the market as well. That's from, I believe, a German manufacturer, and their kind of key selling point is that they have a lot more strict controls around potential contamination of creatine, because I think there was some kind of concerns probably decades ago at this point that it was an ingredient that was quite often either deliberately or unintentionally tainted with banned or unsafe ingredients. So just to kind of summarize then, if you're looking to launch a creatine product in Europe, the key things to be aware of, first of all, from an actual ingredient perspective, you're looking at either creatine monohydrate, creatine citrate, creatine pyruvate, and you should definitely avoid creatine malate, and you're going to have to help me on this one, Dan, alpha ketoglutarate.
Perfectly done, Lee.
Great. It's also probably worth mentioning from a customer perspective, creatine monohydrate is quite nice because it's flavorless and truly flavorless, not like unflavored whey protein that tastes awful. It genuinely doesn't taste of anything. My experience of these other kind of more novel ingredients is they tend to have quite a bitter aftertaste, so they don't kind of offer the best tasting experience either. Then in terms of dosages, you want to be meeting that 3 grams of creatine, which will vary. So for creatine monohydrate, you mentioned that's 3.4 grams per day. Presumably that will be slightly different for citrate and pyruvate. But you need to be hitting 3 grams of creatine per day in order to make the authorized health claims for the product. And you don't want to be exceeding those. The reason being that we don't have to cover every individual country, but broadly speaking, you're going to bump into a lot of issues if you're trying to sell that product across Europe.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so that's creatine kind of wrapped up, a nice little bow on it. Next we'll move on to ashwagandha, which is another ingredient that probably, like myself, you've seen all over Instagram, lots of influencers talking about it. It is traditionally used in Indian medicine. It's an adaptogen, and it's thought to enhance the body's resilience to stress. Traditionally, it's been used to reduce stress and anxiety, and it seems like there's some kind of limited data on its ability to improve physical performance, and also some association with increased testosterone levels as well. Largely, I would say, unsubstantiated. Dan, I'm assuming from a claims perspective, also kind of not safe territory to be looking to market your product in that way.
Yeah, so as it's a herbal ingredient, ashwagandha doesn't have any authorized health claims, but there are a list of on-hold health claims that could potentially be used. So on-hold health claims are in a bit of limbo, really, from a regulatory perspective. So while they're on this list of on-hold claims, they can be made, but you need to ensure that they are scientifically substantiated. So you need to be able to ensure you can defend it. And also, the claims that are on the list aren't necessarily always can't be used sort of verbatim as they appear. You perhaps need to adjust them slightly to make sure that you're not pushing the boundaries of medicinal claims or going beyond what would be classed as a health claim in the food sense. So really, my sort of words there would be use them with caution, and perhaps speak to a regulatory advisor.
And just in terms of the regulatory status of ashwagandha, I assume that's, like, say, controlled at a national level. What does that look like currently? If you were looking to sell a product across Europe that contained ashwagandha, what are the kind of challenges that you're likely to bump into?
Yeah, so herbal ingredients are as you say, they're controlled at a national level. But in addition to that, you have regulation from both a food and medicinal product perspective. So a lot of them might be used in, as I say, food, or it could have been used in sort of traditional medicines, which then mean you've got to be very careful as a brand to make sure that your product stays on the right side of that food and medicine borderline. So for ashwagandha, generally speaking, it's acceptable in food supplements in the EU, but there are some national differences to that. So in Denmark, the Danish Technical University looked at the safety of ashwagandha and concluded that it wasn't safe for consumption. And the Danish authority has taken that on board and essentially banned ashwagandha in the market. In other markets, we see Estonia, they class ashwagandha as a medicinal ingredient, so it shouldn't really be in any food supplements there. But that safety issue that I mentioned in Denmark, that's getting picked up a little bit more across the EU, and there have been investigations by a few different bodies on ashwagandha, and it's actually led to what we're seeing now, which is a recommendation for its safety to be reviewed at European level.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, that European review is in the very early stages. It's just they're just looking at the preliminary part of how to conduct the review, but it could eventually lead to a ban or a restriction on the use of ashwagandha across the whole of the European Union. So it's really in flux from a regulatory perspective.
Okay, so it's kind of an ever evolving piece and something to really keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
So actually, this is more of a cautionary tale again. So just to kind of summarize our discussion on ashwagandha, it is in flux. It's an ever-changing opinion. Would you say it's fair to say that the trend is towards higher regulation and probably more restrictions around selling the product across Europe?
That seems to be the way it's going. There've been some restrictions brought it, well, certainly recommendations, but they're essentially being enforced on label warnings in some markets. Of course, we're seeing the safety reviews, so it's looking like it's going to get more restrictive.
Okay, and from a claims perspective, there's around 10 or so on hold claims for ashwagandha. I assume each of those has its own conditions for use, so tricky to kind of summarize, but you'll need to get into the weeds of that. And our recommendation would always be, firstly, if it seems in any way medicinal, and if you're not kind of qualified to make that judgment yourself, I highly recommend you speak to a regulatory expert that is. Then in any case, we would suggest you completely avoid that because it's highly likely that it will get picked up on. And then the ones that are perhaps more permissible, perhaps closer to some of the wording we see on authorized health claims, so things like talking about the maintenance of bodily functions, things like that, nice and kind of safe wording. Those should be used with caution as well. So you need to make sure you can substantiate them, and you also need to make sure that you're complying with the conditions for use as well. And then even then, there's a big caveat to say, do that with caution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, and this brings me to our final ingredient, which is Tonkat Ali. I think widely popularized by Mr. Andrew Huberman of the Huberman podcast. It is largely spouted as a testosterone booster. It's a herb from Southeast Asia. It's also been purported to reduce blood pressure, fever, and fatigue. So Dan, where do we stand from a compositional compliance perspective? Is it legal to sell that ingredient within Europe?
So Tonka Ali is probably one of the, on today's podcast, that's probably the most clear cut of the ingredients we're talking about. So it's actually been subject of a novel food consultation, which means an authority has reviewed it and decided whether or not it's a novel food or not. And it was concluded that this is a novel food. A novel food, for those who don't know, means that it doesn't have a significant history of consumption in the EU prior to the 15th of May 1997. And from a regs perspective, that means that it can't be guaranteed to be safe. So it should go through a safety assessment before it can be marketed. In 2021, EFSA actually conducted a safety assessment on Tonkat Ali as part of a novel food application. And as part of that, they concluded that it has the potential to induce DNA damage, particularly in tissues in the stomach and intestines. So as a result, couldn't conclude that Tonkat Ali was safe for consumption. So it remains as an unapproved novel food, and as such shouldn't be used in food or food supplements in the EU.
Okay, so that one's a little bit depressing, but nice and simple from a regs perspective. Open and shut. Do not launch products with Tonkat Ali in Europe.
Yeah, quite clear.
Great. Okay. So thank you all for listening. Hopefully you found this conversation interesting. Regulations aren't always the first thing in people's minds when they're looking to be a product. We're here to say it probably should be, if not the first and certainly the second, before you kind of get too far down the line in terms of investing in packaging and batches and things like that. If you're interested in learning more about Rubicon and how we can help you bring products to market safely and also quickly, then please get in touch.
Hi, my name is Ashley Moore, Commercial Director for Sensient Pharmaceutical. Today, we're going to talk about consumer demand for natural ingredients in the sports and active nutrition industry. But first, I'd like to introduce Sensient Pharmaceutical. We are a global provider of colors and flavors. Our team is solely dedicated to working on applications in these industries, with sports nutrition falling under nutraceuticals. This means we understand formulation challenges, working day in and out to help consumers bring their innovations to life. As my colleague Ricardo will discuss in a bit, sports and active nutrition has what we'll call formulation opportunities when it comes to flavors. Why go natural? Consumer demand and the changing regulatory landscape are driving this shift. As you can see from the data, this shift is occurring globally. In 2024, 41% of global performance nutrition launches contain a natural claim. Of those with a natural claim, 43% were free from added artificial colorings, 30% were free from added artificial flavorings, 17% were plant-based, and 16% were no added sugar. Where natural colors were used, the top color in performance nutrition was beet. Other common natural colors include carotenoids from carrots, tomatoes, and saffron, anthocyanins from berries, grapes, and red cabbage, carmine from cochineal insects, and iron oxides from natural minerals. Right now, there is a regulatory activity in the United States targeting synthetic colors. There are over 80 active bills seeking to prohibit or restrict the use of synthetic colors, with the FDA commissioner announcing the target is the end of 2026 to remove all synthetic dyes in food and medication. What we've seen is consumer perception, once altered, is not contained geographically. Also, global manufacturers exporting to the US would need to abide by this current legislation. There are numerous factors to take into consideration when formulating with natural colors or making the shift from synthetic to natural, including usage rates, processing, and storage conditions. Additionally, plant-based ingredients inherently add a layer of complexity to food safety controls and are susceptible to microactivity and pesticides. Formulators and procurement will want to ensure that their natural color suppliers have a comprehensive quality and certification program for colors and coloring food derived from plant sources to ensure that consumers receive safe, quality products free of harmful contaminants such as pesticides, heavy metals, and unauthorized solvents. I'm now going to turn it over to Ricardo to talk about flavors in the sports and active nutrition market.
Thanks, Ashley. My name is Ricardo Arango. I'm the Technical Service Manager for Sensient, focused on flavors. We're going to talk today of what's the purpose of a flavor in a product, and we're going to also explain how Sensient with the flavors and technology can help you to meet some of the current demands and expectations for consumers. For many decades, food flavors have been used in functional food. This is despite the consideration and requirement for both applications are very, very different. For nutrition, have some of notes that come from the actives, sometimes from the bases that require some masking. So that's when the flavor becomes a big portion of the product and play an important role in the final product for consumers. First one is profile characterization. A flavor can create a unique experience for consumers and create a unique product profile that's gonna meet consumer demands. Second one, a flavor and a technology from Sensient can help you to mask some of the off notes that are coming from the APIs or the bases, and it's gonna provide a very sensory experience for consumers. Third point is mouthfeel enhancement. As the people is moving away from animal proteins, looking for a plant-based proteins, those sort of ingredients will require some mouthfeel enhancement to provide the same experience as coming from the original source. Fourth one is rounding off the unpleasant note or tactile sensations. This is really important to create a unique experience for consumers. Create some cool sensation in your mouth, a heat sensation in your mouth that will give you that uniqueness and differentiation for the products in the market. As we all know, and the market is telling us, the flavor innovation is a key driver for this category. Some of the mental information that we have is that roughly 50% of consumers of those sort of products, they would like to see new flavors and new products in the market. The chocolate flavors are coming down, and the citrus and the more fruital notes are coming up. This is how Sensient can help you to overcome some of those market trends. These are the Sensient solutions to create a great product flavor, but also meet the expectations of the purpose in a flavor. Our Sensient flavors, they are true to nature taste. They create with natural ingredients that have a clean label, they are allergen free, and we have the ability to create any flavor profile that is required for your consumers. Part of those flavors portfolio, we have the taste modulations. This is related to some of the off-note and some of the unique experiences that you would like to create for the consumers. We have the natural flavor technologies, some of the products that are going to help you to mask the off-notes associated with the APIs. Also, we're going to enhance some of the positive attributes that are coming from your products. And now, as a trend, people moving away for low sugar, less sugar, we're going to help you to provide some of the solutions in order to help you to boost the sweetness intensity of the products without adding any more sugar. That is part of the technology that we have in Sensient, create a unique experience, create a unique flavor profile that is going to meet the consumer's demands for those products. The mouthfeel enhancement, that was something that we discussed before, how those plant protein bases will require some modifications in order to resemble or replicate the animal protein as good as they can. That's when the mouthfeel enhancer will work really well, and it helps you to provide that great experience for consumers. This is a great example of how the Sensient technologies will help you to improve and get a better product on the market. The example that we have here, we're using the smooth-all technology in a pea protein shake. Using some of that technology, the smooth-all technology on the product, allow us and help us to reduce some of the raw beany and chalky notes that were coming from the base, but also enhance some of the positive attributes of the products like sweet aromatics, the creamy mouthfeel, and the overall sweetness of the products. As you can see, the smooth-all product will shift the flavor profile of the product to a better suitable product that will meet the expectation of the consumers regarding the sweetness level, the mouthfeel of the product, and also reducing the off notes that naturally are coming from those sort of bases. This is just a good example of how we can help you, how our products can improve and create a better product for you to launch. Now, I'm going to move to Ashley to wrap it up. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ricardo. To wrap it up, consumers of all ages are incorporating more sports and active nutrition products into their daily lives, whether for hydration, to boost their workouts, or to replace a meal. This is a growing category that was once limited to athletes. Consumers and those responsible for purchasing these products are looking for natural ingredients and exciting flavors. Sensient can help drive this innovation.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Kev Robinson, and as the editor of Nutraceutical Business Review, I'm delighted to extend a very warm welcome to the Q&A session of today's roundtable discussion. We're here to chat about sports and active nutrition. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the presentations from our expert speakers, but now let's get a little bit more interactive with them, get them to tackle or sidestep, depending on their athletic prowess, some of the questions that you've kindly submitted. So the first question I had teed up, which I think is appropriate to everyone and gives us sort of a nice starting base, is what are the best alternatives for joint pain for active consumers? Maybe Lee, you could start us off with perhaps some aspects of the regulatory side of things.
Sure. So one of the kind of key considerations for anyone looking to bring to market a product that's making any kind of implied or explicit health claim to do with joint care is the consideration, depending on the market where you're selling it, around the health claims themselves. So, for example, in Europe, we have a list of pre-authorized and a list of on-hold health claims that are ingredient and dosage specific. So you couldn't market, say, a glucosamine or a turmeric or a curcumin as a joint care product, because the implied health claim being that it's having some benefit on your joints, and because those ingredients don't have authorized health claims. So what we see that's quite common in the industry is the inclusion of an ingredient that does have an authorized health claim. And kind of the closest you can get is things like vitamin C that have authorized health claims. that state that vitamin C contributes to normal collagen formation and the normal function of cartilage, and that needs to be included at 12 milligrams per day, which is a pretty low, really low dosage really in the industry. So overall, from a regulatory perspective, we'd advise that you think about kind of how you want to market the product, and then depending on where you're marketing the product, just make sure that you're kind of covered from a claims perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Ricardo, maybe you could comment from sort of a natural perspective, or those that lend themselves to taste masking.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, from a flavor perspective of taste masking, that's something that you want to, making sure the customer or the consumer is aware and is happy to take the product. So some of the natural actives, they have some off notes or some unpleasant flavors for consumers. So that's where the tasting and mask modulations and also flavors will play a big role in that sort of products. So for example, if you have a nice lemon flavor, a nice aroma, or something that will help you, the consumer to be more willing to taste some of the medications, that will really helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. Where is the borderline at the moment now between sort of dietary stroke food supplements and food classification itself for joint care products?
So looking internationally, there's no kind of harmonization. It varies market by market and even country by country within regions. So within Europe, for example, there will be different rules and different kind of guidances in France, and there would be Germany, even though they're kind of under the EU bracket. So unfortunately, there isn't like a straightforward cookie cutter answer to that. But the things that are worth considering, because kind of coming at this from the brand's perspective, in a lot of markets, it's beneficial if you can market your product as a food rather than a dietary supplement or a food supplement, just because there are less regulatory hurdles to getting to market. So the things that are kind of worth considering, and the things that we go back and forth on authorities kind of fairly regularly, are things like serving size, and that includes the size of the scoop if it's a powder product, but as well the liquid for dilution, and calories as well. That comes under consideration.
Interesting. I mean, I know in your presentation that you mentioned a couple of ingredients, ashwagandha and tonga ali, that may not be the first choice for sports nutrition, active health ingredients, but they've gone from hero to zero, haven't they?
They have, and it's interesting because I'd say it's a moving piece, because ashwagandha in particular is being clamped down on more and more commonly in Europe. So it is really interesting to kind of see the trends that tend to come from the US. They tend to have a more developed market, and they tend to be, that's where the R&D, a lot of the R&D happens. And then we see Europe following, and in a lot of instances, the regs kind of struggle to keep up. And so sometimes there's this kind of grey area, which is just why it's worth that you've considered the regulatory requirements of a particular ingredient before you're looking to market the product.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ricardo, I think this may be one that sits nicely into your level of expertise here. Questions come in: what natural sources of B12 can be used in a dietary supplement?
Yeah, that's a really tough question there. The B12. So probably just put me on the spot there. Yeah, I don't have probably the answer there of what sort of naturals. We got a lot of flavors that they can help you with that and can help you masking some of the notes, but some of the natural, that will be probably a question for someone else, because I can speak you all the flavors, how we can use the flavors on that.
Absolutely, no problem. There are no wrong answers here.
Oh, I'm gonna just jump in there really quickly. So apologies. Yeah, so we, from a regulatory perspective or a recommendation perspective, Sensient tends to stay out of what we would call like the active industry. So when you talk B12 and things like that, that's not necessarily in our wheelhouse of items that we would supply. But to Lee's point about like ashwagandha and acceptance in different markets, we do follow those trends. And, you know, we've seen a massive influx of, you know, consumer acceptance in North America, and into Europe. And when you start to get into like dosage forms, like how much ashwagandha can you fit into a gummy application that someone would want to take? How do you flavor that? It's, you know, it's really interesting, the shift in the market that we've seen. But yeah, from a what can you use for B12, Ricardo and I probably aren't the best resources for that, but
totally appreciate that. I'm just asking the questions that were submitted, and just one little housekeeping to, if you are going to speak, could you please put your camera on? Otherwise it makes for a really dull looking video.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
Our other presenter, Ashley, was she's in a customer meeting, so I am filling her position. Not well, but I will try.
Yeah, and we're delighted to have you. Thank you for showing up here today.
Evan, sorry, before you move us on to the next question, I can probably speak to that somewhat. It's not particularly in our wheelhouse, but from experience of kind of customers that we work with, things that we've seen. So obviously B12 supplementation has been a big trend because veganism has been a big trend. So the two kind of go hand in hand. And from kind of a natural source perspective, a lot of times people look to food, so things like clams, oysters, liver, fish, eggs. Something that we've seen, though, from a supplements perspective is desiccated liver, which is actually a really old supplement, but being positioned now because it is naturally high in vitamin A and vitamin B12 as well. We have seen that kind of fill the void a little bit. And I'm sure there are other examples as well, but that's kind of the one that comes top of mind.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yes, I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. These are questions we've submitted, and I'm quite happy if you say this one isn't for me. Let's move on. I'm going to try another random one then. How is the need for quality sleep being addressed in the sports nutrition space, and by whom? Any volunteers?
I can give some thoughts if you'd like.
Please, Lee. Thank you very much.
Sports nutrition is obviously, it's a big category, and it's even bigger than it was 5-10 years ago. I think it's probably fair to say that sports nutrition has its origins in bodybuilding, which isn't even really considered a sport per se, but certainly that pioneered the development of things like whey proteins and amino acids. And it seems like the trend, like creatine, for example, massive trend now, was first brought to market, I think, in the 90s for bodybuilders. So they tend to be ahead of the curve. And in terms of sleep and supporting with that, that's the understanding of how important that is, from both like a mental clarity perspective, but also from a physical performance perspective, has been its own trend, its own sort of holistic thing that's happened over the last few years, and people just kind of understanding more about that and the significance of it. From kind of a supplement perspective, things like melatonin, that's been massive in the US, but also we've seen it's permitted in a lot of the markets in Europe. It isn't, sadly. In the UK, it's classified as a drug. So we're not free as consumers to just walk into a store and purchase it. But I can tell you firsthand that when people are on holiday in Disneyland, they will pop into a GNC or one of the other stores and pick some up there, because it is, it is a well-studied and pretty safe supplement. And then there are also things like, not from a supplement perspective, but things like CPAP machines and stuff like that, I know are a growing trend. And the interesting thing about that, and why I mention it, is that we've seen the knock-on impact of that being products being marketed as kind of adjuncts to the CPAP machine. So things that will like keep your mouth wet, for example, because I think it dries out your mouth for some reason and maybe makes you breathe out of your mouth or something. So yeah, that's why I can comment on that.
But it's interesting you say that, because if I do come back from an overseas trade show, you can bet your bottom dollar I'll have a tub of melatonin locked away somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Having lived in the US before, I know it's good stuff. So I would always pick that up, and I find it works. If I can move that off to my sentience here, maybe not particularly on the sleep aspect, but you mentioned in your presentation regulation against synthetics. Would this drive, the market for more natural sleep products?
I think that, sorry, go on.
No, Lee, you're good. You're definitely gonna have some some input on this as well. Um, I think when you look at sports and active nutrition, kind of back to the earlier point is it's kind of this gray area in the States. So sports and active nutrition would fall under nutraceutical or functional foods for us here. So there's been growing consumer demand for natural products within that space. So if you look at the product launches, like free from added artificial colorants, free from added artificial flavorings, plant-based has seen a surge. And then also, back to Lee's point earlier, an increase in botanical acceptance. As we get into the functional food space, natural is a growing trend across the market, and that includes everything from the sources of, the protein or the energy to kind of the colors and flavors that differentiate your products in the market. So the regulations that we're seeing in the States around the removal of synthetic colors are really going to have an impact on the sports and active nutrition market because they kind of fall under those functional foods. So while we'll call the main ingredients, we're already seeing a surge in natural sources. The supplementary ingredients like colors and flavors are going to be heavily impacted by what's going on here.
Excellent. And Lee, you were keen to jump in there, I think.
I really don't have too much more to add to that. It's a really good answer. Just to say that I think one of the kind of major developments we've seen from a product development and ingredient innovation perspective that supports this journey of naturalization that I think we've seen a lot of products go on is the development of stevia and that as a sweetener. But it was very poorly perceived, particularly in Europe to date. Not everyone sort of liked the taste. But now I think it's got to a point where it is very well accepted by consumers.
Fantastic. Probably another random question, so I'm please don't be afraid to say this isn't one for me. Where are the more active mushroom-based nutrition supplements? I'm asked. I'm not sure I've ever seen an active mushroom. I mean, they're fun guys, but I guess we mean mushroom-based active nutrition supplements. Is this something that's I've seen a lot? We've published a lot about mushroom-derived ingredients. Is this something that's permeating the sports nutrition sector as well?
I mean, just from what I've seen on the shelves here, I think what we were seeing is, we'll say, like after COVID, and more of this holistic focus around health and nutrition, and again, the shift from sports and active nutrition from traditionally bodybuilders to those who wanted to take on a more active lifestyle. With that, we saw kind of a surge in, we'll call it like cross claims. So no longer just like wanting mental clarity and having to take one thing and then, taking a sports up or, creatine powder, or then having your melatonin gummy. We started to see this kind of incorporation of cross claims. And with that came kind of a surge in mushrooms from an immunity perspective and a mental clarity perspective. And then again, kind of that incorporated into the functional foods that you would see as well, that you would use for, like, if you were to eat like a protein bar or an energy bar before you went into the gym, it would, some of them would say added with reishi for mental focus and things like that. So we saw that kind of coming up after the COVID pandemic, and we're still seeing incorporation of mushrooms into formulations. Maybe not to the extent that we were back in 2020 and 2021, but still development.
Incredible. Okay, super. Well, we'll watch the market and see what happens, because these things do tend to sine wave a little bit depending on what's suddenly popular or what some influencer has got hold of and is happy to talk about. Brilliant. So there were a couple of questions here which were really directed at Lonza, and I'll have to save some time to get them back on the call at some point. There's a very specific question here, probably sits in Lee's camp, but we'll see where we go. What do you see as the most effective route to market for a data-rich, plant-derived bioactive with a non-sedative mechanism for sleep and anxiety relief?
So as soon as I heard that question, and spoilers, I have seen the question before, my brain went straight to that. That sounds like a novel food, which in the EU basically means that it can't be sold until a novel foods application has been submitted and approved. So it's not you can't ever sell it. It's just there isn't a direct, effective route to market. The only route to market, I think, probably would be a novel food application for Europe anyway. And that would involve a safety assessment and also projections on the estimated intake and some kind of evidence, proprietary evidence that the product at the dosage that you're intending to sell is safe. And the kind of benefits of the novel food applications that you do get a period of exclusivity. So that tends to be around 5 years, which means that if you're approved and your novel food application is successful, you have 5 years advantage on your competitors there. And that's both from an ingredients perspective, but also from a health claims perspective as well. The watch out on the claims would be that talking about sleep and anxiety relief, it's creeping towards medicinal claims, and they wouldn't be permitted in kind of under any circumstances. There are some claims that have been authorized to talk about reduction of tiredness and fatigue, so things like vitamin B12. And I mentioned that as, you know, if you're looking to bring a product to market that helps with sleep and anxiety, it's going to be really, really hard to talk about anxiety. But from a sleep perspective, you might want to either consider including an ingredient like B12 that has an authorized health claim, or when you're submitting a proposal for a new health claim, you keep to the wording that's already been authorized previously or as close to it as possible. So it's talking about things like contributing to normal bodily functions rather than curing, treating, or preventing. That would be the kind of top line steer.
Fantastic. So really, they should probably try and stick to structure function claims as opposed to health claims.
Yes.
Which would be the Ricardo. Anything on that from you?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, from the flavor perspective, I will say, and as we talk, you know, the actives and some of the ancient roots that they were using, the ashwagandha, the B12, they come from a source, and obviously they have some naturally of notes. So that's what you need to talk. Okay, what sort of flavor will pair well with that? What sort of masking do we need to making sure that obviously the consumer are getting the benefit of the active, but also has a pleasant effect on that. So different formulations can be done, also different applications. So gummies, capsules, tablets, all sort of those products will be a good solution for it, that you need to making sure that you pair really well with the flavor, but also having that benefit from the consumer.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So there was some feedback. I was recently wandering around VitaFoods and looking at the upshot and what people had derived from their time on the show floor. And there was something published on the web that said companies are continuing to focus on the sports nutrition niche, which they say, while visible, is narrow and facing headwinds. Judging by the conversations we're having, that doesn't ring particularly true. It seems to be becoming more diversified. Is that what you guys are seeing in the market?
I think what we've seen is it's really murky water as to what is it like a traditional dietary supplement and what's sports nutrition, because like Thorne, for example, I think they're probably one of the biggest selling US dietary supplement brands, if not global dietary supplement brands. One of the biggest selling products is creatine, which is traditionally a sports supplement product. So I think it's really hard to say now what is sports nutrition and what's kind of traditional vitamins, minerals, and supplements.
And is there a chance that these supplements can become, I use the term loosely, performance enhancing? We've seen the slight increases in speed during triathlons, better recovery, etc., better sleep. Is there a danger of it going too far, or will they always be less likely to be picked up in a doping test than anything else? Probably not. So the future lies in crossover innovations, I'm told. Functional foods and superfoods with broader appeal and more scalable potential. Sensient, would you see that as a forward running out of time? Thank you. Would you see that as a way to move forward in the industry?
Absolutely. Like Lee said, it's kind of sports nutrition, nutraceuticals, it's functional foods. It's kind of not easily classified right now. So I think the market, if you again just looked at it in the traditional sense of sports nutrition and what it used to be, that's why some may say that it's a very narrow niche market, but it's so much bigger than that. It just kind of comes down to consumer perception and what they are classifying as kind of sports and active nutrition. I do think that you're going to start to see much more incorporation of functional foods, functional botanicals. And then as you start to move into like natural coloring sources for these items that could have a cross claim in terms of the function, and then from a flavor perspective as well, the incorporation of flavors and extracts, and Ricardo will be able to talk maybe a little bit more to that. But I do think that it is a growing space, and you're going to start to see a lot more in it.
Fantastic, thank you, Ricardo. You've been tagged in, or the baton's been passed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as we were talking, innovation is a key. It's a really big role in this category. So the more flavors that you create, the more, again, we're talking about different applications. So you're looking at liquids, you're looking at some capsules, some gummies, gels. So all those different applications, you will need different flavors. So I guess innovation is the key on that thing. So we start innovation from flavors perspective, but also kind of the masking. How do you enhance some of the positive notes or the positive attributes of the products, but mask some of the negative off notes that coming from the actives? So yeah, definitely in the flavors perspective, the innovation is going to be huge, not just only for the flavors, but also for different applications that's going to be happening for that category.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Guys, you've been an incredible team, and to use a baseball metaphor, you've knocked it out of the park. So I really thank you for your time today. If there's any closing comments you'd like to make, feel free, but you've exhausted my list of questions.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kevin.
Absolute really pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I'm sure there'll be more to come, so I look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, guys. Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, I think that's all we have time for today. We're approaching the finishing line. It's been a great race, and we've thoroughly discussed sports, nutrition, and active health. Once again, sincere thanks to my speakers and panelists, and to everyone out there for tuning in. I hope you found that to be both informative and entertaining. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and follow, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is Dr. Kev Robinson signing off with Love and Rockets. Be seeing you.